Okay, so while we're waiting to get started in about 2 minutes, in the chat, can you put your name, where you're from, the age group you work with? I would just love to see who's here. I wasn't expecting so many people to be here, so it's going to be exciting how these activities go, but I'm just excited to see you all here. So please let me know where you're from.
Okay, Angie, I'm going to go ahead and give you the host baton and have an amazing event. Everyone should be muted right now, and then you can just invite them to unmute when you are feeling ready for that. And if you are not muted, please feel free to mute yourself until Angie's ready to bring you all in. Angie, are you all set?
Yes, so just to double check, after you pass it over to me, I can start. There's no other logistics or anything that needs to be.
No other logistics other than, hey, welcome everybody. And we are live on YouTube also, so it's very exciting. We've got 230 people here and 15 on YouTube.
Wow.
So our last session, we hit about 430. So we are having an awesome day of learning. So this is really exciting. Okay, Angie, you are now the co-host. You should see a pop-up.
Watching for it. Haven't seen anything yet.
On the bottom of your screen, you should see at least the security and the breakouts now.
Maybe I'll just stop sharing and then I can see it. Yep, I can see breakouts.
Okay, wonderful. Have a great session. Everybody learn lots. Angie is wonderful.
Okay, so if you are in this room, you are here because you want to try, talk about, discuss, find unplugged activities that you can do with kindergarten, maybe pre-K if you do some modifications through 5th grade. My name is Angie. That's my Twitter handle, so if you want to connect later. I just want to start with my goals for today. Let's see. There we go. So my goals for the summit, I will introduce myself and give you some of my background and talk about why I'm doing this. I want to share with you some of the favorite lessons that I've done in classrooms with students. And I want to try some of them over Zoom. So maybe you're in a situation where you meet with your elementary students over Zoom or Hangouts or Meet. And let's see how some of these activities might translate in that setting. So we're going to try some of them today. I'd also like to learn about some of your favorite activities, and then I'll share some additional activities that we won't try over Zoom just because of time. So what you'll need, because I'm going to try to make this interactive, is a piece of paper or a few pieces of paper, maybe some sticky notes if you have them handy, a marker or pencil or both, possibly some cups. Again, this is all if you want to participate. You don't have to. You don't have to be as interactive, but I'd like to try it. So cups, if you don't have cups, maybe a handful of rocks. See what that looks like. And a growth mindset, because like I mentioned before, I've never done these activities over Zoom or over a live hangout like this, but I'd like to try it because maybe you want to do this with your students. So this will give you an experience. Just an FYI, a lot of these resources are resources from companies where I've either been an ambassador or a facilitator or a part of their advisory board. I'm not getting paid to do this workshop, but I want you to know that I am connected in some way with a few of these companies whose resources I'm sharing. Oh, let's go back. Okay, just a look ahead at the schedule. So I was just watching Ben Friesen's summit presentation earlier. You're here for Unplugged, but we have a whole day full of great other resources and sessions for you. And then we'll have kind of like a breakout room at the end. So if you try some of these unplugged activities and you want to continue learning with other people, we'll have a room that you can go to. You'll also get CEUs for attending. So if this is your first session of the day, you will get credit for being here. And let's get started. So, like I said, my name is Angie Kalthoff. I was a kindergarten English language teacher. Then I was a technology integrationist for a pretty large school district in central Minnesota. And now I am a program manager and instructor for the Early Childhood Technology Graduate Certificate Program at Tufts. Along my teaching journey, I've found a connection to wanting to know more about computer science and what's happening as kids are engaging with this in computational thinking. And I've found that there's so many connections to the lives around our kids with computer science, and those were things I didn't see initially. But now the more I think about it and the more I engage with it, I see connections everywhere. So I've been trying my best to make those connections available to both students, teachers, guardians, adults. And if we've ever talked before, I always have to plug my Hansen connection. I think about when I was in middle school, I was in love with Zach Hansen and I wanted to marry him. So in middle school, I made a Hansen website using GeoCities. And to me, I was just driven. That was my purpose, to marry Zach. So I made this website and I didn't see any of the technical aspects around it. And now as an adult, I think back and I think, wow, I wonder if a teacher or another adult that I knew would have told me, well, that could be your career someday. You could create websites if you like doing the research and thinking about the user experience and being able to be creative in the pictures you use. I never saw that connection. So now that's part of the why that I have when thinking about computer science, is looking at what my students and what kids are doing, what they're interested in, and then helping make that connection for them. So just an overview. I'm from Minnesota. I moved to Boston to work at Tufts. I'm back in Minnesota right now due to the COVID-19 situation. But if you wanted to come to Boston to see me, it would take you 418 hours if you walked, or about 23 hours if you drive. So this was my very first classroom. The technology that I had was an overhead projector when I got started. It changed a lot over the years, and I think about all of the learning and design that I've learned about over the years, and sometimes I cringe when I look at my classroom, my first classroom, but it also has a special place in my heart. So today we're going to talk about unplugged activities, and it's going to be an interactive webinar. So I do hope that we can figure out how to make this both ways: participation in chat, maybe some unmuting of your mic, maybe some video. I might need some help with that. Andrew is my host. Andrew's my host in here. So I have the mentality and the mindset of Ed Camp. I love Ed Camps, getting people together in one room and sharing our knowledge. And I think the smartest person in the room is the room. I align with that with the Ed Camp philosophy. So that's what we're going to do today. So today's webinar is going to be about more of the activities. If you're looking for more of the research behind what unplugged activities are teaching our kids, why to do it, some more examples for early childhood. In my current job, I'm also running a series of webinars around early childhood technology, and we just had one this past week on unplugged activities, and Emily Relkin and Margaret were our guest speakers, and they shared a bunch of, Emily shared a bunch of research that she's currently doing at DevTech, the research group at Tufts, around computer science and computational thinking and unplugged activities, and what it's teaching our students and how it's helpful for them. And then Margaret shared a bunch of activities, more specifically to pre-K and activities to do at home. So know that there's another free webinar if you're interested in some of that information. On our Google Doc, the Summit Google Doc for today, I created a table because I would love to know too from you what unplugged activities you are doing. So on our table, it's linked on the Summit website, but if you want a quick way to get there, you could use this bit.ly/DL unplugged. In the table, you'll see a space to put the name of the activity, a link to the activity, any resources that you would need, and the age range it's for. So I'm hoping as we walk away from this video in about 30, 40 minutes, you'll have some resources that we've tried together, but you'll also have shared resources that you've done with your students. Okay, so let's get started with Unplugged. So in the chat, let's make this part interactive. What is your definition of unplugged, or what do you think about when you hear the word unplugged? I'm going to leave this up so you can have a chance to read it if you'd like. Then I will talk about it a little bit, but I'm going to look to the chat first to see what is your definition of unplugged. So I'm seeing tech-free, no screens, no devices, zero tech, no electronic device, hands-on. When something isn't plugged in, being outside, living in the moment, not virtually, analog or not with electronics, paper, pencil, manipulatives, no technology, simplicity. Yeah, so unplugged to me embodies all of that. This definition up here is what I took from code.org's curriculum. They have so many unplugged lessons, and we'll try some of them today. But if you're looking for a formalized definition, what you see on the screen was how I was first introduced to unplugged activities. And as I was learning about computer science, I was learning about unplugged activities maybe like 6-ish years ago. I didn't know what it was before then, but I saw what my students were doing unplugged with each other, and I wanted to learn more, and that was my hook. That's how I got started. So let's try it. Okay, so this is how we're gonna try this. Let's see what happens. So you can see back here a star, and I'm standing up here by my computer. So this activity, code.org has these two activities. They're called Move It, and Happy Maps. And the objective of the lessons are to help your students think very specific step-by-step actions and get them to understand that when they're programming a robot or a computer and they're thinking algorithmically, they have to tell the students exactly what to do. The computer is not going to just do what it wants to do. So these are activities that I've done with kindergartners. We started with Happy Maps, where we have this little cartoon flurb, and you have to think about how to get flurb to the apple. So in your chat, go ahead and show me which direction would flurb need to go to get to the apple. So in your chat, you can use an arrow or you can type it. If you have a piece of paper by you, why don't you try to draw an arrow on it and hold it up to your camera? And I'll see if I can see anybody's screens. How would flurb get to the apple? So I'm seeing a lot of information coming in the chat. I see up, I see the caret symbol, I see an actual like emoji type arrow. Oh, and now I see left, up, right. So I didn't ask you what is the shortest way to get flurb to the apple. So that's another thing you can think about. So there isn't one right answer unless I say what's the shortest way. Okay, so now we're going to move over to Happy Maps, and that's what you see on the right part of your screen. And this is an activity that we did in classrooms to get kids up and moving. So on the floor in front of them, they had 6 pieces of paper, and they started on the compass rose. So they started standing on the compass rose. And then a friend, somebody in the class, would have to give them directions to get to the happy face. So the person standing on the compass rose didn't know where the happy face was. That was turned over. And their friend gave them directions by using their body. And that's the way that their friend would get there. So I'm going to ask you again to either participate in chat or with your cameras. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see everyone's images, or I guess the majority of people's images. So how would you get me from where I am now to that star over there? If you have your camera turned on, try using your body and directing me with your arms as directions. Okay, so I see I'm going to step this way. Did I get to the star yet? No? Okay, so now what do I need to do? Okay, I need to go back over this way again. Am I touching the star yet? No. Okay, so now what would I need to do? Okay, I need to go backwards. Did I get to the star? Yeah, I got to the star. Okay, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so now let's take a moment and think about the activities we just did. So what did we learn as a group? How could this be adapted to your learning situation right now? You could give these directions to students to do at home with their families, away from a Zoom meet, away from anything electronic. But if you are doing something with meetings like this, what did you learn as a participant? What are some things that you would need to think about in order for it to be a successful, fun activity for your students? Let's go ahead and take a moment to share that in the chat before we move on. Okay, so I see that the flip screen does make it a challenge. Yeah, you're having to think about where you are, where I am, and what direction I'm going to go. I'm seeing that it is good intro steps to coding. Clear directions are important. 3D makes a difference. Verbal versus non-verbal directions. So in my mind, I was thinking I would have maybe 10 people in this Zoom meeting with me, and we would all unmute ourselves and shout out directions, but that is not feasible right now for all of us to unmute ourselves and shout out directions. So I had to change that on the fly. I'm also thinking about where I'm standing, where I'm teaching. It's a very small area, but if I was outside, maybe I could draw a grid with chalk on the ground, or if I was in my kitchen, maybe I could use painter tape and make a grid on the ground so it's a little more clear as to how far a step is when you tell me to go over. Okay, let's go on and try another one. Okay, so this activity is called My Robotic Friend. And I did this in classrooms as young as I think first grade. Code.org has a few variations of it. There's My Robotics Friends Junior, My Robotics Friends, My Loopy Robotics Friends, so it can scale up as kids get older. And for this activity in classrooms, we used cups. So we used cups like this or this, depending on the building I was in, the classroom I was in. So I was thinking about how could we do this at home? If you're teaching kindergarten or first grade, maybe when you ask your kids to grab cups, maybe they're going to grab like glass cups or coffee cups. And in a minute, you'll see why that might not be a great cup to use. So maybe we could use rocks, or what other materials we could use. So basically what's going to happen is one person is the computer and one person is the programmer. And using symbols, you have to create a program or an algorithm, a list of steps that you can follow to finish a task, to build a tower with cups. And in the lesson plan that I have linked, they give you some examples of towers that you could build with students to have them have like a starting point. So for this, again, let's just try this together. I'm gonna unmute myself, or not unmute myself, stop sharing my screen so I can see more people. And I'm wondering if anyone, there's a lot of people, so I'm gonna do this. Raise your hand really high if you've done this lesson with students. Has anyone done this lesson with students? I just wanna see a visual. No, not seeing a lot of hands raised. Okay, unmute your, Kristen, can I have you unmute yourself? I'm gonna just call you out. You can't do it? Okay, that's okay. Let's see. So this is what I'm gonna just do a visual then. So
we have a couple other people who have done it. Susan Owens.
Awesome. Can Susan unmute yourself? Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Susan, if you can unmute yourself. Andrew, can you see what Susan's saying?
I am saying I have to do that for them, so I can do that for her.
Okay.
Susan, here we go.
Yeah, I've done the cups activity. I didn't do it online, but I'm really interested to see how it would work online, but it was a really enjoyable activity for my students.
Okay, we're gonna do this online then, so stay unmuted. So one thing I learned is if you have a kind of like a template drawn out for students, it's easier for younger students to know where to place the cup. And when you say move over one, where that move over one is. So Susan, can you just give me some directions like pick up cup, move cup right one, put down cup, kind of like the directions that you would do in a classroom, and let's see what it looks like online. And as Susan and I are doing this and you're watching, think about things that you would need to talk to your students about if you're doing it online. So what are some of the clarifications or directions that you would need to set up ahead of time? Okay, Susan, let's try this. So I have my stack of cups. I know where I'm going to put them. What is my first direction, Susan?
Take the cup on the top, one cup off the top, and place it in the first circle.
Okay, I did that. Now what?
Take your hand off that cup and grab one new cup off the top.
Okay.
And then place it in the next circle.
Okay, now what?
Then you take your hand off that cup and you grab another cup from your stack in your hand and you place it on the third circle.
Okay, let's do one more direction.
Do you want me to just keep going in a line, or?
I ran out of room on my cart, so what else could we do?
Take one cup from your stack.
Yep.
Place it place it on top of the two cups and the first two cups, in between the first two cups.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. Share screen. So we just did that verbally. Susan didn't know she was going to help me with that, so she did it on the fly. Thank you for helping. So in the code.org lesson, they have arrows that you can use. And so the up arrow would mean pick up cup. The down arrow would mean put down cup, step forward, step backwards. So thinking about what you just saw and experienced, what are some things that you would need to do if you wanted to do this live over Zoom or Google Meet with your students? So I struggle with the kids being the robot because they know what the kid is saying, even if the computer says it wrong, and they do it right? They do want to help out their friends. So in this situation, what could we do? I could be the robot as the teacher and the kids could create their program, right? Make sure materials are visible, decide who's talking. So it's not all of them yelling at you. That's a really good point, right? If you have done a Zoom with a class of 10 to 20, 30 kids, and you don't have clear directions on who's supposed to talk when, it can get loud. So again, this lesson, you could just share with families to do at home without you, or you could try it like we just tried. Okay, so the next one is called graph paper programming. And so graph paper programming is done between at least two students. One person is going to make the program. So the program is made up of using arrows like you see on the screen. Move one square right, move one square left, move one square up, move one square down, and color in the square. So for example, if you look at the image one, here is the program for image one. So it says move one square right, color in, move one square right, color in, move one square right, move one square down, color in, move one square left, 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 color in. So now on your pieces of paper or sticky notes, if you have paper, make a 4x4 grid. Mine fell down. So I have my 4x4 grid. And here is a program that I would like you to try. So if you've never done this lesson, one thing that I've learned is it's important to tell kids where to start, because this is where I want you to start in order to get the image that I have hidden. But if you don't know that, in the upper left-hand corner is where I want you to start, maybe you would start down here. Then your image would look completely different. So go ahead, take a minute, try to fill out your grid using this program. I'm going to stop my screen share so we can see everyone's. Well, wait, no, I'm not going to, because then you can't see it. I'll give you like 10 more seconds to try, and then I'll stop my screen share so we can all share what we have of our images. So once you've done this, in the chat, just give me an okay or ready, so I can see that there are at least a handful of people who are ready to show their pictures. I see one okay, ready, okay. Okay. Getting a lot of okay. So I'm going to stop my screen share. Now, I would love to see your images. So hold your images up so that we can see what it looks like. Yes, so your image would look something like this. Go back to my screen share. Okay, so what did we learn from doing this activity? How could this be adapted to your learning situation right now? As an adult who is participating, what are some questions that you had or things that you would need to share with your students? Andrew, let's pick somebody who would like to unmute themselves and just share out about 30 seconds to a minute. What's the best way to facilitate that, Andrew? Andrew, you're muted.
Yep. We'll take a volunteer. You can chat in whether you'd like to volunteer, and we can unmute you. Do you want to restate what you're looking for?
Yeah, so what we just did, how could we adapt that to our current learning situation? I'm wondering if Kristen would want to share now that we know that we have to unmute her, because she was the first person to say that it could be made into a seesaw activity. Can you try to unmute Seeger, S-E-E-G-E-R?
Yep, hold on one sec. There we go. All right.
Hi. I think you could easily put this into a seesaw activity. You know, put your images of what you want students to make in a grid, and then put your algorithm or your program on there, and then have them share their work in a video with you and the rest of the class. It wouldn't necessarily be live, but they could share that through Seesaw.
Yeah, I like that. How many other people are using Seesaw? Maybe just enter it in the chat. Who else is using Seesaw? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Seesaws, and I just even saw another one, Flipgrid.
Yeah, that would be good too.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, let's keep going. So the next one I have is the crazy characters algorithm. This one is really fun. So it is, we do it in classrooms, and typically I have students sit back to back so that one student is giving directions and the other student is drawing what the other person is saying. So as I'm giving directions, if I'm partner 1, I don't see what partner 2 is drawing, but they just have to listen to what I'm saying, and they're drawing a picture. And then at the end, they show me the picture that I told them to draw. So we're really learning about being specific in our directions. So we're gonna try that. So grab a piece of paper. I'm going to give you directions, and you're going to try to draw what I am telling you. And then at the end, we will share our pictures again. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'd like to see your faces as I'm talking, and you're just going to listen to me. So on your piece of paper, take your pencil, and in the middle of your piece of paper, draw a circle about the size of a quarter. Okay.
There's just one question about if this is also a code.org lesson. If you want to.
This one is from Barefoot Computing, and I'll show you a little bit more about the lesson after we try it.
Excellent, thanks.
Thank you for asking. Okay, so you have a circle about the size of a quarter. Okay, so now from that circle, you're going to make a half circle touching the circle, like half of the circle that you have. You're going to draw that touching the circle so that both endpoints of that half circle touch the circle, and you're going to make enough of those to go all the way around your middle circle. It's really hard to try to explain it without seeing your screen. Okay, at the bottom of your paper, you're going to draw a bunch of little lines spanning across, like horizontally across the whole screen, maybe about 1 inch long. So just draw a bunch of horizontal lines about 1 inch long across the whole horizontal bottom part of your screen. Then you're going to draw one long line connecting that quarter-sized circle all the way down to the bottom of your screen. And at the bottom of that long line, you're going to make a heart shape. Okay. Now I'll show you what I was trying to get you to draw, and then you show me what you drew. Is this what you drew? Hold your picture up to your camera. Hey, okay, it was pretty close. Awesome, thank you for participating. So I was trying to get you to draw a flower without telling you that it was a flower. Andrew, let's try again for another volunteer to speak up and see if they can tell us about their experience doing this activity. So
Sounds good.
thank you. Yeah, go ahead and try to find someone.
All right. If you'd like to volunteer, just chat in. Oh, I just lost the chat. I think it was Renee. So is Renee volunteering there?
I see Renee Peterson.
All right. So Renee, welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi. Okay. So what did you think of this? How did it go for you?
Well, when you said that the quarter-sized circle in the middle, because I'm an artist, I do a lot of art. I noticed that if it's a small quarter-sized circle, this could be a daisy. And then when you said, because where your big struggle was to explain these little curves.
Yeah.
And because originally I had the idea in my head that it was opposite, it was more of a U shape. And then I didn't quite make, and then when you said that they were attached at the opposite end, because I have a whole grocery list worth of learning disabilities, and one of them is dyslexia, so I flip things around. And because you said on the opposite ends, my dyslexia went, oh, daisy. And then when you said a heart shape at the bottom, I got the leaves. Now the thing that was confusing though, was the horizontal lines.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the horizontal lines. Is that the ground or the grass?
That was my hope. Yeah.
Okay. A change that I would have added is instead of horizontal lines, I would have added, you could have had the horizontal lines, but if you had added clumps of vertical V-shaped lines.
Okay.
So that it would end up with clumps of them. And I'll draw a bigger picture of it like that, so that it would look like bits of grass.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Renee.
So the picture that I chose was a flower, but you could pick any picture for students to draw. The point is just to kind of walk them through how to draw it without telling them what they're drawing. And so this is from Barefoot Computing's website, and I have a link to the lesson plan. And I think I actually saw it go into the chat already. One of the things I really like about the way that they organize their lessons is they help you understand which computational thinking concepts and approaches are being taught within the lesson. So I took a screenshot of the website where I got this activity from so that you can see what kids are learning as they're doing this activity. And again, if you want to get deeper into what they're learning as they're doing these activities, that webinar that I shared on one of the first pages, that gets deeper into the research around what's happening. And this is being recorded, so you can go back and look at it later. So let's think about, what did we learn? So if you're going to do this with your students, what are some things that would maybe need to be changed? What are some things that you experienced as a learner that you were like, gosh, I wish you would have explained it differently, or I wish I would have had this. And I saw Rachel just say great debugging on the grass. Yes, so debugging is when you find and fix a mistake or an error. So that's what we did. So go ahead in the chat and type, what did we learn? How could this be adapted to your learning situation right now? Is this an activity that you would give to parents and families and guardians and have them do it with their kids on their own? Would you try it in a live situation like this? Would you record a video of yourself and share it with them and not do it live? What kind of vocabulary would you need your students to know? Maybe if you're working on angles or shapes, you could add in some of your learning vocabulary that you're working on with your students. And it is a great way to teach growth mindset. I agree. Oh, you could even flip the roles. You could have the students direct the teacher on what to draw. Maybe use it with a whiteboard right behind you. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so my next activity that I'm going to share is Robot Turtles. So Robot Turtles is a board game. It's one of my favorite board games. My friends who have kids typically get Robot Turtles for a birthday present or some kind of present. And Robot Turtles allows you to take this board game, right? You can see it here, but you can also see it on the screen, and place different jewels around the board game, and you have to get your robot to get to the jewels. And so kids play cards one at a time to get their robot there. And the cards can get more in depth and harder as you go, but you could start with kids as really young, and you could start teaching them how to play games, taking turns, how to be a good sport. You can get pretty in depth and harder for older kids and have them come up with different obstacles and things that you'd want on the board game that you have to get around. So there's a lot of strategy in it. I've learned that having a template like this for kids to put their cards in so they understand how to lay their cards down left to right, and so that they can see it as they go, it helps with debugging. So Robot Turtles is a board game that you can buy, but if you don't want to buy a board game, I found this blog that is on the screen right now, and they made their own game similar to Robot Turtles, where they're using like Lego pieces and little superheroes, and kids make their own card games. So then you don't have to buy the game, but you're still teaching them step-by-step directions. You're playing a game together. You're thinking about what comes next. You're breaking down the steps. I was going to play a video, but we're not going to play it now. Know that it's in here. It's a great way to understand how to get started playing Robot Turtles if you've never played before. But let's think about Robot Turtles. How could you adapt that game to your learning situation right now? Go ahead and add it into the chat. Have you ever played it? If you've played it, have you made any adaptations? How could you recommend it to families within our current situation? I'm going to watch chat just for about a minute and then move on because there's so many more things I want to try. I see that it's helpful to hands-on learners. Yes, you do have access to the slides presentation. It's linked in the Google Doc, which is on the Summit website. Okay, the next one is called Conditionals with cards. So what you need here is a deck of cards, and I have the deck of cards already here. So what we're going to do, if I draw a king from the deck of cards, everyone is going to clap or use the little clap emoji from Zoom. If I don't draw a king, so else, everyone goes, "Aw." So in a classroom, in an environment where everyone's together, you could actually hear them clap and hear them say, "Aw." But in this situation, I can't hear everyone clap and say, we have, I don't know how many hundreds of people participating live and from stream. So I'm going to pull up a card from my deck, and it's a king. So using your video, oh good, I see people clapping, because if I draw a king, you clap. I also see in the chat the word clap or the emoji clap. Okay, let's try another one. Aw, right, it's not a king, so there's the else, aw. So this you're starting to teach conditionals through unplugged activities. So that was just an easy way to get started. Here's even more in depth, more intense. And this is, these are the rules that I made, but you could also turn it back onto your students and have them make rules. So let's get started and do the first one together. So I have a Jack of Spades. So we start at the top. If my card is red, is my card red? Nope. So then I go down to else. If card is higher than 9, is it higher than 9? So then I'm going to give the other team a point. So you could play a game of conditionals with cards. How could we modify this from an in-person game to a game that meets our needs right now? Andrew, let's see if we can find somebody who would be willing to unmute themselves and just take a minute to share their thoughts.
Sounds good. We'll take a volunteer.
So in the chat, if you have some thoughts on this, go ahead and type your name in the chat and we'll know to call on you. We'll just wait like 10 seconds. And if we don't have a volunteer, we'll continue on. We just heard from Renee. Let's see if there's anyone else. Okay. Have someone keep score. Okay, Megan, thanks for your thoughts. Have someone keep score as we play the game. Could it be done asynchronously? We just tried playing synchronously. How could it be done asynchronously? So when we're not all together at the same time, how could we play this game? We can use greater than and less than. Okay, I'm gonna keep going because we're running low on time, but feel free to keep chatting away with your thoughts. So I'm currently, I guess I just finished a class on design thinking. And one of the activities that we did in this class was creating a story with yes and. So there was a team of 3 of us and I started, and it was about how to plan a party. So I started with, we're gonna plan a party and it's going to be outside. And my partner then said, yes, and we're going to have cupcakes and candy. And the other person said, yes, and we're going to invite all of our friends. And then I said, yes, and. So we just kept building this collaborative story together. And I recently saw this Learn from Home activity book from Wonder Workshop with their robot Dash. And that's one of the robots that I would use prior to this experience in classrooms. And so I thought that might be a fun way to build a collaborative story together, have pictures and colors and activities from this book that we could bring into our story and have kids write together. So instead of trying to unmute ourselves, because that's not necessarily working in this situation, keep that thought in mind. How could you do a collaborative story with your friends? And then this is just linked to the coloring book. So that might be something fun for you to do if you've used Dash before. The next 2 slides are thinking about how to use models and build things at home out of stuff that you might already have. So this is a resource from Pebble Go, and they have a whole section about using models, what models are, how they're helpful. So kids learn about models in their online research platform, but then they have activities that you can do without being online. And this is the one included in using models. So it's having students build a house that could survive a hurricane or a flood, and then bringing in the challenge of taking that house and putting a fan by it to see if it would survive the wind from the fan, or putting it inside of a bucket of water to see if it would survive being in the water. Another way that you could use models is to create your own robot. So this again is from Wonder Workshop's Learning at Home activity, where it encourages kids to use materials that they have at home to build what their version of a robot might be. There are so many great picture books out there that teach growth mindset, engineering, building, STEM, robotics. And so Rosie Revere Engineer is one of my favorite that I would use in a kindergarten classroom. And the little I on the right side is Dash's I. Again, that's from that Learning at Home packet from Wonder Workshop, and kids would color in the different squares for the books that they've read. But I wonder if we could have you share in the chat right now, what are some of your favorite STEM inspired storybooks or picture books that you've read with your students or that you're encouraging kids to read right now? So I see Hello Ruby. I see there's a whole series from the publishing house. Okay, great, they're coming through. Little Red Fort. This idea came from a conversation with my nephew. So I have a nephew in fifth grade, and he has a journal, and he was getting really frustrated that his older siblings were reading his journal. So we started to have a conversation about, well, what could you do with your journal so that if they did find it and read it, they wouldn't know what you're writing? And then we started to talk about encryption. And so there's on this page a video from code.org talking about encryption. So basically we started to create his own alphabet so that even if his siblings found his notebook and they started to look through the pages, they wouldn't know what his stories are because it's encrypted. It's not spelled like using the alphabet that we're used to. It's using his own set of letters, symbols, and numbers. And then we talked about how maybe him and his friends could write encrypted letters to each other, and then they would have to know the key and understand what it meant in order to read it, and how fun that might be. And they could mail it to each other like in the mailbox, or they could send it to each other over an email if their parents wanted to get in on it too.
Angie, I just wanted to let you know we're at about the 3-minute mark.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
And then another resource, I use Scratch Junior. It's a software that you put on your iPad or tablet or device to help kids understand how to program at an early age without being able to read. And they have some Scratch Junior coding cards, and 15 of those cards are unplugged cards. So if you're looking for more unplugged resources, this is one place you could find them. And then I was going to ask you and have a conversation when I thought we had 10-ish people in the room to unmute yourself and talk about what are your favorite go-to resources and where do you start when you're wondering what resources are out there for unplugged activities. So this is my list of like where I start. These are where I go. So Hello Ruby, Code.org, Barefoot Computing, and CS Unplugged. So the activities we did today came from these places. And then I just have 2 updates. So my friend Naomi Harm, we talked about doing this webinar together today, but something came up and we weren't able to. So she just wanted to share these resources with you so that you have additional resources. So there's the Dash and Dot Fairy Tale Adventure, Brightly with printable activities. And then the Lego Foundation has so many great resources. It can be overwhelming and you might not know where to start. So this is linked to one article that could give you some places to get started. And then my final thought is my friend Andrea, she was leading a coffee at CS and coffee chat earlier today. I asked if she wanted to do this with me, but she wasn't able to, but she said, please share the MN Codes events. And there is an event coming up on May 16th about the digital meetup day, and it's free for you to attend. So if you're looking for other CS inspired unplugged activities, this would be a great event for you to head over and check out.
All right, I just wanted to let you know a couple things. I posted the link to the CEUs, so you can get those. I think you might have to cut and paste that link, but that is in the chat. There is a lounge open through Google Meet, and you can click on or take that link and you can join that if you want to continue this conversation. We saw many great ideas flowing in both on the live YouTube stream and then also in our chat stream so that we could continue the conversation. And finally, there is a spot to do a response on Flipgrid.
Okay, and I think I stopped sharing my screen. That's all I had for you. Thank you for participating with me and trying this. I wasn't sure how it would work, but I'm glad we were able to make it interactive and give you a chance to try so that if you do it with your students, now you've had at least one experience and you know how it feels. So thank you for coming. actually, I can put my screen back up and show you the rest of the sessions as we go ahead and head out. Let me show you that.
Thank you, Angie.
Yes, thank you. And I'll head over to the meet area. So if anyone wants to keep chatting, that's where I'll be. And then Andrew, I'm done. So if you need to do anything or take away my screen share, that's okay.
All right, you're good. Thanks. I think, Angie, I think you close the session.
I close it? Okay.
Yeah.
And the chat is going to be saved, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
There we go. Thank you, David.
Yeah, so I end up getting chat files. So that's one piece. If anyone needs those, or if Andrew and Angie need them, they can just request those later. And we'll continue to merge how all of this is going to line up.
Okay. Okay, so then I'm going to just leave this Zoom and head over to...
You just leave, and then at the beginning of the next session time, which is not until the hour, then you pop back in to the new link.
Okay.
Okay, have a great one. I'm going to be ending the meeting, everybody.